Christians, but when you look at the historical sources, we can see that the Christian Jews and the like Pharisaical Jews, for example, afterwards, they used to disagree about the interpretation of the scripture. And what we see is that there was a greater divergence in terms of interpretation the later centuries that you get. So that's why sometimes when you look at earlier rabbis, their reading of certain verses within the Bible are more aligned to the Christian perspective. But for example, in terms of the way they view the oneness of God, was very different to the oneness of God. They didn't reject that God could have a physical, like a body, or came to earth literally. So, for example, in the Old Testament, when you see that God visited the prophets, when you look at the readings, they actually don't say, oh, God cannot enter creation. But when you get to the time of Maimonides, he made it 10 articles of faith and said, God, define what God is. So we see an evolution in rabbinical Judaism. That's why we reject pretty much what the rabbis say in a theological sense. However, where there are some things that align with Christianity, we might say, look, even the Jews believe this as well. So it's not just a Christian interpretation.
Well, it's not 10, it's actually 13. There's 13.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, 13. Yeah.
So, but like I say, this is what I'm saying is, the point here is, the Jews acknowledge the prophethood of Muhammad, peace be upon him. And even though they are the chosen people, they acknowledge that Muslims are the only people other than them that will attain paradise. It's for the simple fact that we follow the Noahide laws. This is what they believe, right?
But they don't follow it.
But they don't follow it, right? That's all it is. Okay, so
why listen to a liar?
What do you call it? They're not lying. They're hypocrites, right? They're not lying about this, right? We do follow. I mean, the Noahide law is also within the Quran, right? So we do follow it, right? And the Prophet, peace be upon him, is a prophet, and they acknowledge it. So they're telling the truth. They just choose not to follow it for a simple reason. They're racist. So anyhow. We do have more people in the back chat. So, Brother Muhammad, inshallah, if you want to stay on, it's not a problem. But Habibi, if you've got a question, inshallah, ask the question.
Yeah, sure. My question is to Paperboy. I was just wondering. Well, yeah, of course. So, in your slide about the Mubahala, you mentioned 5 people who were present, but you didn't show any source for them being the ones present there. Could you mention a source?
Off the top of my head, no. But if you just look around, you'll be able to see those were the people that were identified. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact source that I used. If it comes to me, I will state. But off the top of my head, I can't remember the source.
Well, I did have a look around, and when you look up the Mubahala, the first thing that comes up is Wikipedia, which mentions these 5 people. Is that maybe where you got it from?
No, it wouldn't have been. I would always double check, like, with Islamic sources generally. Even if I use Wikipedia, I would always double check elsewhere. So I just use Wikipedia sometimes in my presentations just to summarize a point if it's long-winded. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I'd love to ask more questions, but I think there's more people waiting.
Ask one more.
Yeah, you mentioned in passing, I'm not sure if you want to take this back, it was also about the Mubahala. You mentioned that, just because one person is cursed doesn't mean their entire bloodline is cursed. Isn't that the entire point of the original sin? Like, is that not like a key doctrine?
No, but original sin. No, but that's in terms of a curse. A curse doesn't have to be down. It can be, but a curse can be in different way. It can be executed in different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to always be impact your family or just yourself. It could be either.
But wouldn't it be cherry picking then if you're just like, well, yeah, he did the mubahala, and then these people were cursed, and the curses can be in different ways, and only these people were cursed, and these other people they were like in a lesser curse. Isn't that cherry picking?
No, because my point for that was in terms of if you look at how the people who attended, so the first person, Muhammad, who died within a year. So the stipulation is you're generally supposed to die within a year. That's more the consensus. Some say it can take longer. So he died within a year. His sister died. His daughter died within a year. His son died within like a year or 2 years. So my point was, from an outside observation, would that look like a curse upon someone, or would it look like God is bestowing benefits on that person? Because if we look at other prophets, do we see the same sort of thing happening around their family? So it's up to the individual to decide whether that looks like, it's like you might know someone and they're going through bad luck, and you think in the back of your mind, it's almost like nothing good happens to that person. Are they even cursed or something? So that's the point I was making.
Basically, just conjecture. What if?
Well, here's the thing. There is no set definition of what a curse looks like. There's no set criteria. Curse can manifest in different ways.
There is in Islam.
So how does a curse manifest?
What do you call it? That's not for me to say. Like I said, you when you bring up these points, you need to do the research behind it to say, okay, so this is the curse. This is what happened to the Prophet, peace be upon him. I can prove that this is a curse from God because according to your sources, a curse from a potential mubahala or a mubahala is X, Y, and Z as defined by X, Y, and Z. That's how you would formulate the argument. But you didn't. And like Habibi said, you've made a positive claim that those 4 individuals were with the Prophet, peace be upon him. But then when asked for your source, you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, I took a lot of source. I haven't memorized every. So
but it's meant to be part of your presentation, mate. That's what we're saying, because now it's coming across as, think about how it's being perceived by the audience as well. I have the source, but I'm not quite sure. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look like you've, I understand you've put 3 weeks into this in terms of the research and putting the presentation together, but when it's coming across as like, okay, I've done 3 weeks, but I've either rushed it or I haven't done my research properly. Either way,
if the statement is true, then it doesn't matter unless someone's disputing that they weren't there. Most people's common knowledge.
But it's only for us to dispute when you provide the evidence. Like, technically, I don't have to address. Technically, I don't have to address anything that you don't provide an evidence for. Correct? But I engage with it because I know where you're coming from. But so I still engage it so I can correct you. So, but that's what it is. So this is what I'm saying. Like, now you're getting these questions, which are gonna really zoom in on your research and what you've presented. And when you respond by saying, "Oh, I don't have it," or "I don't have it off the top of my head," and I haven't really checked this, or something along the lines of that, it doesn't look great for you. It looks great for me because I'm the one sitting here unprepared for what you brought.
Yeah, but I think it's making more of something that isn't. I've provided every single slide pretty much has references. If I left out 1 or 2, I could find the source and put it in. And yeah, I can say, yeah, fair enough. But I've generally shown in
but it's like even like when we were talking about Al-Abyad, right?
Mm.
You brought sources, I agreed, yeah, but none of them were proven to be authentic sources about him. So it was all conjecture. So it's not just, even if you bring a source, how can you establish that this is something that's reliable? Like when you give, like for example, earlier when you were providing minor opinions, why is that the reliable opinion? You couldn't. The best you could say is there was a difference of opinion. Because this difference of opinion exists, I'm going to go with the one that.
Yeah, but you have to remember, an academic claim is based on the evidence, not the conclusion. So there's many things in scholarship that some people may disagree with. The job of a scholar is to look at the data and come to a conclusion. So it doesn't. and that's why they have the term a fallacy of appeal to the majority. Just because a majority agree on something, it doesn't mean it's true.
No, but that's not why but that's the thing. That's not why the majority agree. It's not because simply a majority agree. It's because it has been refuted.
No, it's just because, for example, with the claim about the statement about the prayer and whatnot, of the partnership with Allah, who is the verse referring to in the third person, it's like even Qadi Iyad said the commentators make a theological claim because it makes a partnership with Allah.
Yeah, so, but you were arguing from a linguistic point of view, but then you quoted something on a theological plane, so it didn't fit.
Yeah, so I'm saying in terms of the linguistics itself, the argument can be made. The scholars would disagree.
I already explained it. I already explained it from the language point of view. Anyhow, listen, I know it's a Q&A and we're sort of going back into what do you call it? I'm gonna have to let you go, Habibi, because I've got to let the others up. So I'll put you in the back chat, inshallah.
Thank you. Keep it up. And Paperboy, you rock my world, man.
Thanks. nice.
Like that one,
Cool.
Yeah, let's just do 10 more minutes or so.
Yeah. Oh no, right.
Just a quick reminder.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, right, just a quick reminder. Just a quick reminder on behalf of Brother Yemeni that please keep your questions on topic, inshallah, and be fair. No back and forth, no debates or discussions amongst yourselves. Just one question to Brother Paperboy, and Brother Yemeni will respond, and vice versa. So, inshallah, we're going to keep that format.
Yeah.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
salam. Hassan. Go ahead with the question.
Yeah. So my question is for Paperboy. You brought up Musaylima al-Kadhab, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a reason we call him al-Kadhab, the arch liar, right? That being said, you still put him up. You may be aware that he tried to answer the challenge of the Quran and failed miserably. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but if you had been aware of that, would you have still brought him up in your presentation?
From what I'm aware, he didn't fail. You'd have to say how he failed, because from what I understand, you had the wars and he was then disposed of or whatever. So if you want to enlighten me how he failed, because remember, even during one of the previous presentation, I brought up one of his a verse from his so-called Quran, asked Al-Yemeni to critique it. He said he didn't have the ability to. Fair enough, but then the question was, well, what is the criteria to reject this verse of his that I brought? So if you're saying there was one, I'd be very interested to hear how he failed the challenge.
Well, since Brother Yemeni hasn't expanded upon it, I don't think it's my place to do so. But if you were to ever meet an...
I was busy with the chat, sorry. The back chat, sorry. You say that again?
Yeah. Right. I was talking about how Musaylima al-Kadhab failed miserably when it came to answering the challenge of the Quran. I'm referring to Surah, his rendition
of Surah Al-Fil,
yeah. I'm a non-Arab, by the way, and even I found it hilarious. So as a non-Arab, someone who's very weak in the language found it hilarious, I can only imagine what a proper Arab would think of it. I'm just saying, he's not exactly the best form of the argument to bring on.
Yeah, but you haven't, just to make a statement, you haven't given the criteria of why he failed. Just to say you were laughing, that's not criteria. We need an objective standard.
Okay.
So
all we can say is go and look at what Musaylima al-Kadhab actually brought in comparison to the Quran, because he said I brought something like the Quran.
Yeah,
right?
But my point was we need an objective criteria. So to say compare it, there needs to be
dude, in part 2, which was maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago now, we said, what do you call it?
It has to break the Arabic language.
Yeah, but we also said that, you know, like, for example, you could have gone to and watched Mansour's presentation on that. And you will know what the
I would rather look at if you direct me to a scholarly book rather than Mansour, then no problem.
No, but Mansour is going through that material.
Okay.
That's why I'm pointing you to it. So, anyway, what do you call it? Hassan, Jazakallah khair. I'll put you in the back chat, inshallah. No worries. Inshallah. Good to have you as always.
All right.
Inshallah.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Pleasure. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Lewis, what do you call it? You verified you. It's not a problem. You don't need to turn your camera on anymore, which is great. Pablo, if you can turn your camera on for verification, that'll be great. But before that, perfect. You can turn your camera off. Saifullah, you're gonna come on next because you were next. So, assalamu alaikum, akhi.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have a question for Paperboy, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Yeah, a Paperboy. If the devil or anyone really wanted to deceive the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam to, let's say, gather an army to gain influence and power, to then take the Christians and deceive them and put them under his rule as well. Why, instead of going to a person who had influence, a person who had followers, a person who had access to modern technology and weaponry for the time, a person whom someone who does not believe in God, let's say, could look at and say, this person has great potential to rally a lot of people behind them for their cause and gain a lot of power? Why, instead of going to someone like that, would he go to a person who belonged to a nation that was extremely divided by tribalism and massively outnumbered, outmoneyed, outexperienced, and out-technologied by the Christian empires of the time? And why, this is the last thing, why would he seemingly unnecessarily go against beliefs that the Arabs had at the time that in and of themselves do not constitute idolatry? So to give you an example, the Arabs used to believe that the angels were females. They also used to believe that if a person dies, is killed, out of their bones become an owl. And it says, give me to drink, until the person is avenged. Islam denies both of these things. If the goal was to unite the Arabs, to make an army, it seems counterproductive to unnecessarily go against these things that they believe in. What do you have to say about that?
So 2 points. So the first point is, why didn't he choose a powerful person who had an army who could take over? Well, it's actually, to people, it would be a greater attribution to divinity for an unknown person to it's more impressive for that person to become a powerful nation. We see that in the story of like David and Goliath. It's a small boy beat a giant. People had to attribute that to divine powers. And even the nation of Israel itself, remember, they were slaves at one point. Then they became a nation. They kicked out the people who was originally in the land, and they became a warrior nation, and that's what they were feared for. So people then felt, okay, there must be the God that they pray to must be the power behind them. So it's actually more impressive with someone who has nothing than someone who has something, who conquers stuff, because you would only attribute the success down to their army. But if you had no army, you would attribute the winning of battles to God. So if you were shaitan, that's easier way to deceive people. In relation to the point about things about the previous sort of Arab beliefs, like, look at it this perspective. So the Christian perspective is that the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is the basis of the Christian faith. And without the Christian faith, without the death and resurrection, there's no salvation for anyone. So put yourself in this position. If that statement was true, if you were shaitan, wouldn't you try to convince people that very same way, or the only way of salvation, you would deceive people that actually it's not a way of salvation, because remember the Quran denies the crucifixion. So if you were Shaitan, the question would be to you, and I'm going on the premise that, just for as a thought experiment, that the Christian claim that the crucifixion is the only way of salvation. If you were Shaitan, how would you stop people from believing in the crucifixion, or would you stop people from believing in the crucifixion, knowing that that was the only way of salvation? So from a Christian perspective,
it's a poor argument, because if
what I'm saying, yeah, go on.
Yeah, because the reason is because when we examine the verse that denies the crucifixion, it appeals to history and facts. There isn't deception in it.
So does the Quran affirm that Jesus was crucified?
No, it affirms the reality of what happened.
Right. So that goes to my question. If you were Shaitan, so I remember it was a thought experiment. So I said, if the statement of the Bible is true, and that the crucifixion, this is what. Of course,
I know that's what I thought. I know that's what a thought experiment is, but it just doesn't go anywhere.
Well, it would be nice if you answered the thought experiment. That's why they're thought experiments. So my question to answer his statement is, he's trying to understand this taxes of Shaitan. So I'm saying, look at it from a Christian perspective as a thought experiment. If that statement is true, what would you deceive people in the other way, or would you try to deceive people, or convince people that that didn't happen? So for us, that's how we look at.
If Satan was trying to make
are you asking me, or is it rhetorical?
Oh yeah, I'm asking you as a statement. Yeah, question.
The thing is, I don't want it to go back and forth.
Okay.
Sorry, Brother Yemeni, I don't want it to be a back and forth with the guest and the questioner. Otherwise, it would just open a bigger can of worms.
No.
So, Brother Yemeni, I know you're itching to talk, and there was 2 questions that Saifullah mentioned. So, did you get both of the questions, or did you got
but it's just really the first one. This is the only one I really want to respond to, is because if Satan wanted to deceive you, he wouldn't deceive you by giving something. He wouldn't try to deceive you by giving something contradictory to what you already believe, right? Not in that way. Okay, so he tried, to what's the word I'm looking for? SubhanAllah. So I said, what we're seeing in the Quran is actually dealing with the reality. And the thing is, this is reality that we can verify. We can prove that the early Christians did not believe he was crucified. Right? If Satan wanted to convince us otherwise, he would have done something else rather than give us the facts. Now, the problem is, humanity's is catching up with the Quran. That's the problem. So that's why this argument doesn't work.
Saifullah, I hope you were happy with the answers.
Thank you for having me.
Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right, Pablo, we'll get you on now. Pablo, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Nice and clear, yeah.
Yes. So my question would be, it might be for you, Yemeni. It is on the, let's say you said the crucifixion didn't happen, but it appeared so.
Mm-hmm.
So if it appeared so, what is the reason why it will appear so, but then yet again, they won't believe it?
Allah doesn't tell us how it happened, right? He simply mentions that it appeared as if he was crucified. How that happened, we don't know. The Muslims, we go based on what is reported in history. And what was the only thing that is reported in history in regards to this event are Judeo-Christian sources, nothing from the Muslims, right? So what the Muslims have done is gather the Judeo-Christian sources and formulated their own opinions. None of these opinions we claim to be the de facto reality of what happened. But what it actually highlights is a confusion and conjecture among the Jews and the Christians from the 1st to the 6th to the 7th century, right, of what happened. Because well, you know, like what actually happened? Was it a disciple that was crucified? Was it Simon of Cyrene? Was it Jesus Barabbas? Was it Judas? You know, was he never? You know, these are the different opinions that you find. Was Jesus killed by stoning? This is found in the Talmud. Was he done by crucifixion, as reported in the New Testament? It's, you know, what actually happened, right? And we have these sources, and that is what's reported in our tafsir. The popular one that arose among the Muslims is the tafsir of Ibn Abbas, where he believes that it was a disciple, and this is the one that Muslims tend to align themselves with. But no Muslim will actually say that is the de facto way of it appearing so.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, so I remember watching Paperboy in another, platform. He was saying, let's say the person that took the cross and walked with it all the way to, to the crucifixion site. How would that be possible? A disciple would be doing all of that, and then there are people seeing him, carrying the cross to the crucifixion.
Paperboy hasn't looked at that opinion then properly, because what it mentions is that the likeness of Jesus was put on that disciple.
So then, even if it's appeared so, I mean, it has to be really so good that no one will be able to see it and question it, because if he walked all the way and there are people watching him walk with the cross all the way to the crucifixion site. Because my other thing I was going to say is, even the crucifixion happening, Islam can still be true with the crucifixion happening. Because let's say you guys in Islam, you guys say that, God is giving Isa the power, to resurrect people and also give like the bird, life.
Yeah.
So what can God not, have him killed and also let him resurrect?
We're not saying
to come to him.
We're not saying that this is an impossibility for God. Allah could have allowed Isa alayhi salam to be killed and then resurrected him. We have no issue with that. We're just simply saying that's not what happened. We're not saying it couldn't have happened. We're saying it didn't happen. So the thing is, as well, as it's also mentioned, the believers knew, right? We have it recorded that the believers knew that he wasn't crucified, right? And that they are the ones who carried on the religion, right? But then, almost immediately, we see in the history that different opinions arose regarding what happened.
Okay. I was just going to say that I feel like crucifixion happening would have been actually the best thing for Islam, because then it would spread more, because, they would know like there's a, continuation of the religion, Abrahamic religions.
See, that's
a good point he's made there.
Yeah. Because it's the very fact that it contradicts the crucifixion, and yet it's spread farther than Christianity has.
No, but also you notice it contradicting the crucifixion also makes like Judaism also at the same time still around, because you notice the Jews do not believe in Christ being the Messiah.
Agreed.
But Islam decide that Isa is the Messiah.
Yeah.
So you notice this is the contradiction in the two religions.
But it shows you that Islam is not interested in aligning itself with any religion. It's concerned with telling the truth. If the Jews reject the Messiah, we're going to say, well, that's your loss, because he is the Messiah. You can carry on waiting for a Messiah that's already come, and disbelieve in him. But us and the Christians, we know that he's already appeared, right?
So can I just?
Well, all three books. Go ahead,
Paperboy. So let me just respond to you. So the what you have to remember, deception is believing in something that happened that didn't. So it's getting some people to believe in something that didn't actually happen. So if I said, yeah, I went to America this morning, people might believe me, but if they ask me for evidence, I will not be able to provide it. And this is where we have to use our reasoning to assess the evidence, because what I'm hearing is a lot of conjecture. Well, we don't actually know what happened.
No, you don't know what happened. We know what happened.
We know no Christian disagrees with what happens. We affirm the crucifixion. But in terms of for Islam to have knock it out of the park. If there were actual testimonies from the disciples, or we had a Bible, because it seems odd that there was this level of this, whether it was someone's face on another disciple, after the fact, that none of the disciples, his mother, went around teaching people, actually, this is what happened, and a community was formed around the true testimony of the disciples. What we have is they're lost to history. So what prevailed, according to the Islamic narrative, was the people who were confused or disbelieved or deceived or whatever, or made up lies. But Jesus had disciples. He had his mother. What were they doing afterwards? They went silent, and then we have 600 years of silence. You know, if someone unearthed a book that was dated to before the same time as the Bible, because a lot of the stories that Al-Yemeni is alluding to come much later. So the earlier sources affirm the crucifixion. Even that's why you had the Gnostics who said, yeah, Jesus was crucified, but it was just like a mirage. It was a bodily, like God cannot, you know, the argument was God cannot be in the flesh. So yeah, we saw him, but it was just like a imagination or whatever. So my point is that if you want to get around deception, look at the evidence, because when I was young, and if I skip school and someone says, oh, you know, so and so saw you at the show, I would deny it till they disbelieved in what they actually saw. But the evidence actually demonstrates that they did see me. So we have to grasp, because the Shaitan cannot fabricate evidence like in the future. So if something happened, the evidence should speak for itself, rather than trying to say, well, I think this could have happened or that could have happened. Everyone can do that. The mind is a wonderful thing.
But that's the thing. What do you call it? That's exactly the Quran gives you the history, gives you the actual history.
Right. It makes a claim in the future, but the past does not align.
It does align. Now we know it aligns. Now we know it aligns.
Where's the testimony
with all the history that we have? Okay.
So
regarding early Christianity, regarding
so which of Jesus's disciples?
Dude, you don't have that.
So I'm saying to you, because I'm saying according to your narrative, because he would have had disciples. So I'm saying which of them made this claim, because they were the true believers, the Muslim believers. So I'm saying, where are their statements that we can scrutinize to say, actually, it's in line with the Quran? Is it early evidence or is it late evidence?
So like I mentioned to you, this Judea, I don't remember where exactly it's from, but the opinion of Ibn Abbas comes from Judeo-Christian sources, where it actually mentions about the disciples. This happens at the Last Supper.
So can we? But the point is, can we scrutinize? We get a physical copy of not Ibn Abbas's statement, but the claim,
but his source?
Yes.
Well, we can have a look for his source, yeah. But what we know is that Ibn Abbas was aware of this Judeo-Christian source.
Yeah, but I'm saying for us, we should assess the evidence, and it should be.
Look, we might find it, we might not. We might find it, we might not. Right? Because there's a lot of things. No, because like for example, there are the Abdullah bin Salam was referencing stuff in the Torah that we don't find in your Torah today, which actually displays either he was reading something else or you've lost it. All right?
Or that he is just made up.
That could be, but why would it be made up? Why would it be made up if he converted from Judaism to Islam? Why would he want something he makes up?
Well, that's why we need evidence to assess for ourselves, not just claims.
No, but that's what I'm saying. These hadith, they are part of the historical record. Anyhow,
yeah, but when we say evidence, we mean things that we can, and it's not necessarily proof, but something or data that can be dated to help us. Huh?
But we do have data.
Yeah, but that is data that comes much later.
It's still the primary source.
Well, according to a theological belief.
No, it's a
not.
historical.
If you,
Yeah. Anyhow, look, like I said, we don't want to argue much because we're keeping on 3.5 hours. We've still got 2 guests.
yeah.
But
Okay,
I know
we'll do
me and you could do this all day.
Pablo,
we'll do those 2 and
Pablo, if you want to leave your email address or some contact details in the private chat, maybe we can have a follow-up discussion maybe in the future. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely, sir. What is it? I will leave it in the back chat, and you can, you know,
private.
let me know.
Leave it in a private chat, and it'll be good to have a discussion again.
And also, what do you call it? Every I have this series on my channel called Impregnable Islam, where it's for individuals like yourself to come on, ask questions about Islam, and we can have a proper discussion about it rather than just a Q&A.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yes, absolutely. I have actually some interesting questions. You would definitely love to answer them.
When is that show, Brother Yemeni? When do you do that show? When you open the platform for everybody? What days is that?
So that's what do you call it? Every 3 weeks, because obviously I've 2 to 3 weeks. So just on a Saturday. So I think something's come up for this Saturday. I had a stream plan this Saturday, but the following Saturday there will be a stream. Inshallah.
Yeah, just some advice, Pablo. Before you do have a discussion with the Yemeni, do a bit of research. Look at all the different viewpoints from the Muslim standpoint and also the Christian standpoint, because of course Christians differ also, and the Muslims have different situations of the crucifixion. So do a bit of research, and then God willing, come back and you can have this is the kind of like a discussion that we like to have, a very polite, respectful discussion. And then at least if you don't agree, you can shake hands and go your own way. But yeah, definitely leave your email backstage in the private chat, and then we'll contact you. Thank you, Pablo, for your question. Stay safe, brother.
You too. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Pablo.
Bye.
See you later. All right, Lewis, we'll get you on now. Hello, mate. How you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing fantastic. How are you How are you gentlemen doing?
Absolutely great.
Alhamdulillah, good.
Awesome. Well, I'll try not to take too much of your time. It's a question for you, sir. I would like you to clarify your position and substantiate why you say YHWH specifically is a pagan god, and why it is not the name of the one true God. Could you also elucidate it to me with all of the research and facts in your possession to ensure to make this claim, essentially? And also, I would like to ask if the Jews then knew to worship the name Allah and not Yahweh. I'd like to hear your opinion, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do value if you could put it in detail for me. And afterwards, I'd really value if Paperboy could also answer on your response.
You're muted.
To answer that in detail, I won't be able to do because
no, you're good. It's clear.
Yeah, I won't be able to give you a detailed response in the time that we have left. As we mentioned, I mean, it's not particular to this stream, but we did have this discussion regarding the theophoric names. Yahweh, if Yahweh was the name, to relate it to what we have been discussing, you would find it in the theophoric names. You don't, right? You can't have a partial of the Tetragrammaton and claim it to be theophoric. That's not how it works. What is theophoric, right? Is the name El, right? So El, Eloh, Allah, these are all related in terms of Semitic language. So Jews and Christians, Arab Jews and Christians have no issue in referring to God as Allah. In fact, they do that, right? In the Old and the New Testament, right? Even in the New Testament, they refer to Isa, they say Yasur ibn Allah, right? That's what they say. And in Genesis 1, it's the fourth word, right? Fil bad'i khalaq Allah as-samawati wal ard. That's what is mentioned in Genesis 1. So the name Allah is not it's not strange to Jews and Christians. Okay, it is accepted by Jews and Christians. And as mentioned, the theophoric names, like for example, Yahya, right? Yahya is theophoric, right? We were discussing this a couple of days ago. Yahya is actually a theophoric name in the Arabic language, right? Because it is a derivative from one of the names of Allah being Al-Hayy, right? And also the attributes Yuhyi, right? And this is pertaining to the miraculous creation of Yahya in of himself, being born of a barren mother, right? So Allah made him alive from that,
Right.
So this is how we discuss it. And Yahweh itself, when you study the different traditions, right, with regards to the Old Testament, you realize that the Yahweh tradition is not original to the Torah at all, right? Rather, you have what the priestly texts is what is closer to the priestly text and the Elohist tradition. That is actually what constitutes a more monotheistic teaching. Whereas whenever you come across these doublets and triplets and various other things within these studies, you find out that Yahweh has actually got no place. And this is why whenever you study, for example, like the theophany theology and the angel of God, that's where you start to find Yahweh being sort of pushed in a bit more. But then you see that this is actually referring to other than God, and it's not an issue to use the name of Yahweh to refer to someone other than God. And finally, the Yahweh in of itself, you don't even know how to pronounce it. No Jew knows how to pronounce it. So how is this something that, how can it be so important and yet you don't know? And even if you don't know how to pronounce it, you shouldn't pronounce it anyway, because that's why they use the name Hashem, so that they don't use the name of God. If Yahweh was the name of God, they should not be using it at all.
I see. Well, thank you. I do want to clarify.
I'll just respond to that as well before you ask.
Oh, yes, please. Yes.
So as Al-Yemeni likes to say, he doesn't know what he's talking about because, for example, he said El is the true name because when you look at theophoric names, so I'm not sure if you've seen some of the previous debates that we had on this topic. So I showed basically, if you look at the names of the prophets, so it has a combination. They're theophoric names because they have a derivative of Yahweh in it. So Elijah is my God is Yahweh, and so forth. So you just look at prophets' names and you would see what it means. So he said you can't have a compound of the name. But then he said, for example, let's say Daniel. El is
partial. I said a partial.
Yeah, El is partial for Elohim.
It's actually a full name. It's full.
Not.
It is.
Okay. Anyway,
El on its own is a full name.
El comes from.
Brother,
So El is short, so it means God. But in terms of that statement, there's any linguist or any scholar or anywhere would agree with what Al-Yemeni said in terms of how you construct names, because you could just take any biblical name, type it in Google, and you'll see what it means. So where he got that criteria from, I'm not sure. So the problem that he has, he also mentioned the priestly text and the Yahweh's text. That's only referring to the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, because they try and say, well, there's different traditions. So they try and say the Torah was possibly written by more than one person, because the way they use those, the name of God in the stories indicates there may have been different authors. However, that's got nothing to do. What about the subsequent books in the Bible, the Psalms, Malachi? They all use Yahweh consistently. That is only applicable to the 5 books of Moses. So it's really irrelevant to the conversation. But the main thing is the name Yahweh was always known to the Israelites. And if you look at the context of where the name developed, is because you used to have the name like El or Baal. So it was generic. So then to distinguish, God said to Moses, this will be my name forever. And this is how you should recognize me by. And that's why it's incorporated into prophets' names, because of the reverence for the name. Just in the same way you have Abdullah, which is a theophoric name, and all these sort of names, because there's a reverence to that name. So if Allah spoke Arabic, but then Allah was not the name that was used throughout all the prophets, and it's not a name they would have known. People say Allah and so forth, but it wasn't Allah. So your question is a good one because it highlights the disconnect of Islam from the traditions before, that God clearly identified himself in a particular way with a particular word. It doesn't even matter if you don't know the pronunciation, as long as you have the letters. It's just the same way like the early Quran, it didn't have vowelization. So we know Yod Hey Wav Hey is the representation of God's name. So even if we all forgot how to say God's name, it still represents God's name, which in the Quran he doesn't use for himself. So there's a big disconnect. So that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks. They will say, well, it's not that, some might say it's not that important. Of course it's important. If God says it's important and this is his name forever, how come it's then suddenly changed? So clearly, there's a big problem with using the name. And when they say as well, the name Yahweh is pagan, we have prophets named after apparently a pagan god. How would that make sense? And if you go to Yahya, who is John, that name incorporates Jehovah in it as well. So why would Allah have sent an angel to say to Zachariah, name your son after a pagan god?
Okay, Paperboy, thank you so much. Lewis, hopefully that answered your question. To be honest, we can go back and forth, and unfortunately we haven't got the time to do it. But if you, like I said, if you leave your email address backstage, and we can maybe,
just because there's been a lot of Muslim thing, can we just do one more question if he's got one?
Yeah. So Lewis,
if he's got another question, it's not a problem. We can ask another one. Just for more context, because obviously we don't want to go back and forth again. Just go back on the previous parts, and I can't remember which part we discussed the theophoric names. I think it's either part 2 or part 3, maybe. But have a part 2, yeah. So check out part 2. We have a lengthy discussion about the theophoric names. So have a look at that, and you'll see our positions a bit more clearly there.
Thank you very much. This has been an excellent panel. Everyone here has been really respectful. So I do look forward to coming back on again. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Take care, Lewis.
God bless you guys.
Stay safe, brother. Bye.
And you. Bye-bye. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wow, we have some good guests so far. I'm really shocked by the caliber of people.
This is what I like.
Yeah,
alhamdulillah. All right, AM, last guest, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Good evening to Paperboy. I want to ask a question to Paperboy. It's a short one because he mentioned like the criteria for prophets. What criteria would you have if you lived among Prophet Noah?
Prophet Noah, before Prophet Noah, there wasn't really a proper criteria. So the prophethood really, in terms of the biblical context, started from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because that's when, according to the Bible, there was a defined criteria of prophets who come from the line of Israel, which was Yaqub. So before then, in the Bible sense, it doesn't really show that people were following prophets like Noah. Who was he really followed by? His family. Before that, Adam. Who was he followed by? His family. So the prophethood and the definition was very different pre-Abraham times.
But shouldn't people know or have something to acknowledge someone as a prophet?
Well, there wasn't a set criteria. So in terms of how God interacted with people, he interacted with individuals, but there was no set criteria to say, okay, because follow this person, because they didn't establish a religion or a community that followed them. So that's why that is evidence that there was no set criteria, because like, for example, you have Muslims, you have Jews, you have Christians. Who were the followers of Noah? Who were the followers of Adam? They didn't have books. We don't have books, and we don't have a community, a religious community that argues that these people were prophets. These were the signs for them, and this is why we followed them.
Okay, same question now over to Brother Yemeni. I know you've been patiently waiting.
The criteria is the same. The criteria is the same. It has not changed. If you apply the criteria of the Quran and the Bible of prophethood, right, and what qualifies a prophet to be a prophet, you'll find it fits Adam, it fits Noah, it fits all the prophets up to Abraham, right? Considering you think that the criteria changes somewhat prior, Abraham and before him, you'll see you can apply it to any prophet. It's always been the same, and the message has always been the same. The evidences has always been the same. Miracles, prophecies, right? Pre-Abraham and post-Abraham. It's not changed whatsoever. And regarding the communities, they were all Muslims. The community of Moses, they were Muslims. The community of Jesus, they were Muslims, right? Because they were all submitters to Allah, right? The names that we know them by today, they've been named like Christian. This terminology is actually it's an insult. You've named yourselves. You've adopted an insult of the Romans. It's not a term that Jesus applied to his community. Jews is not, or Judaism is not a term that Moses applied to his community. This is something that all came later. It's so simple.
Good question, though. AM, thank you for coming on.
It was a great question.
MashaAllah, well done.
Jazakallah khair.
Ameen.
Thank you,
brother.
Paperboy, for
Don't
your
forget
answer.
to like and subscribe to the channel. Brother Yemeni's got some fantastic shows coming up, so don't forget, everybody, to subscribe to Brother Yemeni's channel. You got to hit the notification. I get a lot of people contacting, saying that we're not getting information regarding the show. You hit the notification, then you get like a reminder on your phone. So please, brothers and sisters, do that, because Brother Yemeni, mashallah, I do feel he is underrated, mashallah. So he did some fantastic work. Is that any more people in the backstage?
No, that's it. This is the last one. It's a good thing because I took the link off a while ago because me and Paperboy, we both had a long day, so we've wanted to wrap it up for a while now, but this is a benefit for the people, and me and him, we just can't stop arguing as well. So so he dragged on as expected. But AM, Jazakallah khair. I'll let you go now as we're closing up. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Okay. Well, inshallah, it's been beneficial. Look at this. Al-Yemeni is rated exactly 1500. Referring to my chess rating. It's actually 1524 now. I'm not playing as often, so I'm slowly getting back to my 1600 route. But anyhow, that's it. Part 5, the presentation is all done with. Me and Paperboy will discuss whether we want to do a part 6, just sort of to wrap everything up in a nice, neat bow. So we'll discuss that, and if we feel that we need to, we'll do that, and we'll probably have a larger Q&A, a longer Q&A for people to come and ask questions on the topic generally, even if it doesn't relate to either of our presentations. But as long as it's on the topic, we might do that. But like I said, we'll have that discussion off stream and let you guys know. But Paperboy, as always, it's a pleasure. Love your mannerisms and love the care that you take into your research and everything. And we're definitely going to do more of this at some point with other subjects. And to the rest of you, Jazakumullah khairan for joining. Thank you for the Christian guests who came on respectfully and asked great questions. I would love to see you again. And with that all being said, good night and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.